Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first seminar, seminar 2 of 2023. This is ARE-UWA seminar. Today we will have 2 proposal presentations from PhD candidates at the University of Western Australia. The first presenter will be Daniel Martinez, and the second one will be Emma. So Daniel Martinez will start his presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming for my PhD research proposal presentation. I am Daniel Martinez Felip, and I'm working under the supervision of Steve, Chi Nguyen, and David Panel, and 3 external supervisors. The title of this presentation is Social Norms, Financial Incentives, and the Long-Term Persistence of Environmental Actions. I will first start by introducing the problem to be studied here. Then I will follow by explaining carefully what are norms and the role they play in individuals' behavior. Then I will present the studies and the methodology involved, and I will finalize by just some concluding remarks. Many ecosystem services exhibit characteristics of environmental public goods, which is why they are often underprovided because of the so-called free rider problem. Payments for ecosystem services programs are a tool that has been widely used by policymakers to try to solve this problem. And these programs try to monetarily incentivize pro-environmental behaviors of landholders and other stakeholders that are involved in that ecosystem. However, as participation is voluntary, it tends to be mixed across different regions and also depending on the size of the landholder. And there is a low persistence of pro-environmental actions once financial incentives end. One aspect that has not been adequately taken into account in programs is that landholders tend to be motivated not only by financial incentives, but social norms. That is the main focus of this study, among other things. Social norms are social groups informal rules that drives individuals' behavior, as the individual must comply with them in order to belong to the group. Not all rules are social norms. For a rule to be a social norm, the individual must know that the rule is applying in a particular situation and should believe that others will conform the rule, expect conformity, and may punish or reward if you break the norm or follow the norm. Social norms can be classified between the screen. You see the slide now?
Yep, that's great.
Okay.
So,
sorry about that. Social norms can be classified between descriptive norms and injunctive norms. Descriptive norms refer to observed behavior, what most people do in a particular situation. And injunctive norms, also called the rules of ought to, refers to what most people think is right in a particular situation. The fact that you can be punished or rewarded if you break or comply with the norm is what activates them and enforces them over time. And those activation mechanisms can come from second parties and third parties. By second parties, those are individuals who are directly affected by the decision of the others. And third parties are just individuals who are or not affected or indirectly affected. At this point, we must acknowledge that social norms are not static and may not last indefinitely, as they are subject to the constant evolutionary process of society and the groups that generate them. One aspect that has been widely avoided by the research community is that people tend to belong to multiple groups, for example, family group, friends group, colleagues, and then they can be exposed to different normative expectations in a particular situation. And those expectations can be competing. The definition that we make here about competing norms is when following one group social norm implies suffering the punishment of the other group. There are case studies that show how the presence of competition can have motivating or demotivating effects depending on the attitude of the individual towards the issue. Social norms has been widely acknowledged as having important effects in pro-environmental behaviors. In the case of PES programs, there's evidence that shows how a farmer's decisions to participate in these kind of programs is influenced by what other farmers do, say, and think about the program. This allows us to assume that the landholders' preferences are conditional to social expectations of other landholders. And then that there might be some underlying conditional participation social norm in this kind of cases. However, it's straightforward to argue that the influence of social norms can be heterogeneous across individuals. And in this case, in this line, the model by Kimbrough and Bustrop-Nutov argues how this influence is dependent on the balance that you attribute to those behaviors or injunctions. By balance, they mean how you weight those behaviors or injunctions in your utility function. I will now explain the studies of this proposal research. There's a total of 4. The first one is the main methodology is a literature review. And for the second, third, and fourth, I will employ lab experiments with the students as the main methodology. But I will explain now more carefully each one. The research question of the first study is, how do financial incentives and social norms affect landholders' participation in conservation programs? As I said, I will make an in-depth literature review in order to detect the relevant variables and existing norms that may affect landholders' participation in these kind of programs. I will also cover and pay attention on how these social norms are measured, as this could be useful for a possible meta-analysis in the future. And the expected outcome here is to try to understand the role of social norms in both the short-term performance of PES programs, that is during the payments for ecosystem services, and after PES, that is when financial incentives end. This is a long term. For study 2, the objective is to explore to what extent social norms can be used as a policy instrument for enhancing the effect of financial incentives for environmental public good provision. And the research question here is, can a social norm enhance the effectiveness of a financial incentive for providing public goods? Given the literature review that I have already made here, we first make the hypothesis that yes, a social norm can enhance the effectiveness. However, not all social norms are not always. So one of the main purposes here is to try to identify under what conditions we can or we cannot reject that hypothesis. As I said before, experiments is the main methodology that I will be using in these studies. This methodology has been chosen because of the great potential it has as a primary data generating method. The laboratory to locate subjects in the desired situation, and the experimental methodology allows us to create a controlled, motivated, and replicable environment, and then we can establish causal relationships. Z3 or O3 will be used as a software for designing the lab experiments. For the study 2, I will create the conditions in the lab for the social norm to emerge and to have a role. This study will have 3 treatments. The baseline treatment will be a dynamic public good game, where individuals must decide in each round how much they want to contribute to a common good, knowing that the total amount of public good generated will be equally shared among all individuals. For treatment 1 and 2, I will pick social norm enforcement mechanism to just peers. Those will be individuals who are playing the game and whose decision is affected by what they contribute and what the others contributed to the public good. Treatment 1, those individuals who contributed will have the opportunity to costly reward those who also contribute. All individuals in the group will know that. And treatment 2, those who contributed will have the opportunity to costly punish those who break the norm. By making those decisions costly, there is evidence that shows how it can have important effects in incentivizing cooperative behavior, as the one who is punished or rewarded could perceive that the punisher or the provider really cares about the group as he's sacrificing his own payoffs. I will control here for relevant covariates given the literature review that I made in study 1. And the data will allow us to test the relative effectiveness of each norm activation mechanism in incentivizing environmental public good provision in the presence of financial incentives. The objective of study 3 is to determine the relative determine the relative effectiveness of different social norms and forces for enhancing the persistence of environmental actions. And the research question is how influential are different social norms and forces in enhancing the environmental public good provision in the presence and absence of financial incentives. Here I will design an experiment again with 3 treatments. The baseline treatment will be the same as in study 2, a dynamic public good game. For treatment 1 and 2, I will fix the social norm activation mechanism to that one who performed better in study 2. And I will vary here the social norm enforcer mechanism to peers or third parties. By peers, I will design the experiment here in such a way that the utility function for them will depend on what they contribute and what others contributed to the game. And by third parties, there will be a subgroup of individuals who will be just observers and whose utility function will be dependent on what others are contributing. For 3 treatments, the economics incentives will end at some round in order to test the potential of each social norms enforcers in the persistence of environmental actions. The objective of the last study here is to measure the effect of competing normative expectations in landholders' environmental public good provision. And the research question is, do competing norms affect positively or negatively environmental public good provision? I am here making the assumption that the presence of competing norms may affect the underlying cost-benefit analysis that a landholder is making when he or she has to decide whether to participate or not in the program. So in this experiment, they will probably play a dynamic public good again, but in the baseline treatment, I will create the conditions for the anti-environmental norm to dominate in that group. That is what usually happens in reality, as there are few landholders who are willing to switch practices towards pro-environmental behaviors. And in the treatment 1, I will just create the conditions to be a equal relative dominance between the anti-environmental norm and the pro-environmental norm. By dominance here, I mean the percentage of individuals who are more propense to follow one action or the other. So in the case of treatment 1, I will design in such a way that to be a 50-50% of individuals for each one. And this study data would allow us to understand how can we increase the balance of the desired pro-environmental action that is aligned with the program. As a concluding remarks and acknowledging that social norms are important in landholders' decisions to participate in PES programs, the main goal of this PhD project is to study how social norms can be used or leveraged to enhance the effectiveness of financial incentives for providing environmental public goods, and also to increase the likelihood of persistence of environmental actions. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Daniel. It's time for Q&A. Yes, Michael.
I'm going to ask a challenging question. I'm going to make a challenging statement and then see if you can.
Okay.
So you start off by saying what you're interested in landholders, and landholding against social. And then you do 3 experiments involving students.
Yeah.
Which might be framed as being pretend you're a landholder and you have to provide stuff and rewards, whatever.
Yeah.
But effectively, you're going to know whether social norms influence the behaviour of students, EWA students, in this provision of some sort of outcome. I'm worried that you're not going to be able to claim that you can make any insight about the importance of social norms in landholders, because, and you said at the start, social norms are varied, heterogeneous. There are different ones in different groups.
Yeah.
So how are you going to better respond to that nasty example or reviewer comment to say what you've understood is students, but not actually the target group or landholders?
Yeah. Well, the study 1, in fact, the study 1 will allow us to detect what are the existing norms in the landholders community. So we want to activate a particular norm that is already there. So in the case of students, we will create the conditions for that social norms to emerge in the lab and to see how individuals can behave in that particular setting, because in the lab at the end we can create the setting that we really want. And also there are evidence that shows that making experiment with students is in some cases better because they are not playing what is called a game. So in the case of landholders, maybe they can be like optimizing other kind of things, like they have to manage the land and also they are playing the game at the same time. But for the students, they are just playing the game. They want to maximize what they are doing, and in fact it's better in some cases. But as I'm working in the project of Steve, maybe there's the possibility that in the future to do some kind of field experiment of all that. But yeah, now the main idea is to do it with students because it's yeah. But I thank you very much. I will take into account that because it's important.
Thank you, Daniel. I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. Can you unpack a little bit about what exactly you're doing? Because presentation is good, but you're not explicit exactly about what you're doing. For instance, in objective number 2, when you say that you're looking at financial incentives, can you just be a little bit specific? What do you mean by the financial incentives? How much money are you going to be giving? What exactly are you doing? And when you are looking at whatever you are calling what is it? The land. Whatever you're looking at the land conservation one, can you be more explicit exactly about what it is? Because I can get the idea, but if somebody would want to know exactly what are you doing, then it's not exactly explicit.
Yeah.
Just unpack that a little bit.
Financial incentives in the experiment that will design in such a way that they will have more incentives to contribute to the game than non-contributing. That is what usually PES programs try to do, to increase the perceived effectiveness of participating in the programs. But at the end, what I want to observe here is in the study 2 is how can we activate the norm in such a way that we can maximize the final outcome in the presence of financial incentives. So we will design the experiment for the cooperation or contribution norm to emerge, and then we will activate the norm in 2 different ways to see what is the relative effectiveness of each one. So
not yet designed the experiment.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, not yet designed yet.
Okay, last comment.
Well, I think a big challenge with these games is is simulating effort.
Yeah.
Because just make it realistic, and also dynamics, because typically you've got the attention of students for about an hour, which to me, doesn't really represent dynamics, which is decisions taken over a number of years. So that's more of a comment than a.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your.